Welcome to Pubcast Live. I'm Ken Thomas, along with Thor all over. Pubcast Live is the podcast where we celebrate America's love affair with bars, pubs, and breweries. This is episode 6. And this time, first time around for us on this podcast, we will be visiting with someone from a brewery.
That's right. Our first brewery on this show.
Yeah, and it was the first brewery here in the Brainerd Lakes area.
That's right.
It's still going strong. And again, I'm told we will have samples. So what can go wrong with this interview?
Nothing. Hey, but before we do that, I want to some of our listener comments. Hey, we always appreciate you guys writing in, letting us know how we're doing and giving us suggestions. But Eric writes, I enjoy your podcast. Some other cheap beers. Now, this goes back to an episode when
we were talking about cheap beers.
Yeah, we were mentioning a couple of our old cheap beers, maybe when you were first growing up or something. And so even though today we are not talking to someone who makes cheap beer.
No, not at all.
But this writer comments about our episode where we mentioned him. And who knows, we might have some fun with that down the road. But he says some other cheap beers. He says Hohenstein.
Oh, remember Hohenstein?
Hohenstein. How about Red, White, and Blue? He says that's one of his, that was his dad's favorite. Red, White, and Blue. Billy beer.
Oh, okay. I don't even want to talk about that.
Who can remember that?
Terrible.
Falstaff.
Oh, yeah. That was not bad, actually.
And I'm guessing this writer is from Bemidji because it says, and of course, Super John's Grocery Private Stock. It was $1.60 for about $1.60 for a 6-pack.
Okay.
Super John's Grocery Private Stock. We are not going to talk about that beer today.
No.
We are going to talk about a special beer.
No, in fact, I think we will be talking about a much better quality of beer. In fact, so much better that it's not even on the same scale as these.
I don't know. If he can beat Platts, I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Well, anyway, we're looking forward to visiting with our guest. We'll do that in just a moment. We remind you that Pubcast Live is brought to you by Giovanni's Frozen Pizza. Great frozen pizza with over 20 varieties to choose from. Ask for it by name at bars all over central Minnesota. That's Giovanni's Frozen Pizza. Thor, we've reached that part of our show where we get to talk with our very special guest today, and that is Patrick Sundberg of Jackpine Brewery.
Yeah, enough of the chit-chat here already. Let's get to it.
Patrick, first of all, welcome to Pubcast Live.
Well, thanks for having me.
This is such a pleasure. We have been to your establishment many times.
Yep.
And truly enjoy your product. It is wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing me in. So,
well, you're more than welcome, and it's our pleasure.
It's tradition that we have a little sample here as we do the interview. So,
it is.
What are we having first?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Well, no, you tell us, Patrick. What am I cracking open here?
All right, so we've got kind of our best-selling beer. It's about 30% of what we make at Jackpine, our Fence Line Pale Ale. It's a nice, bright, hoppy pale ale, but it's still approachable. It's not overpowering, easy drinking, and that's why I think a lot of people love it.
Yeah. Well, I am a huge fan of Fence Line.
As am I.
And so, cheers. Let's start with a little cheers, Patrick.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming by. This is really a lot of fun. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am not a stranger to Fence Line. I mean, so, and we appreciate you bringing this. This is great. But Patrick brought a few others along, too, so we'll get to that in a moment. But
I like to start with a little history. So, Patrick, talk about how you got started in brewing beer.
All right, so kind of my story in a nutshell. I was a home brewer to start. I picked up home brewing right around my 21st birthday, maybe a little bit before, but
like 4 or 5 years ago. Wow, you haven't been in it that long.
Sure. I was homebrewing about 13 years before I started Jackpine, and entering homebrewing competitions, doing pretty well. I became a registered beer judge, so I know a little bit about beer, a thing or two here and there. Yeah. And that was a fun process to go through. And it kind of got to a point where, as I got into beer and loved beer, there weren't any breweries in the area. So I couldn't go work at a brewery. I had a double major in math and physics, so I like the geeky science part about beer, and I like beer when it's finished.
Once again,
too.
I'm picturing lab coat and frizzy hair. Most of our guests, when they're concocting stuff, that's what
that's a
we like to picture that. Anyway.
Pretty close. And it got to a point where it's like, all right, I got to either do something with this or give it up. So put together a business plan and opened up over in the industrial park in Baxter in just an overgrown garage, kind of an overgrown homebrew setup, and it took off. And that's kind of was my entry. I started thinking it was going to be a part-time gig for me, and about 3 months in, I realized that I had to go all in, and haven't looked back. And now, 8 years later, and we're rocking and rolling in a new space, and plenty of beers. So
yeah, I was telling Ken earlier too, I can't believe that's only been 8 years. What a meteoric rise for you, because
feels like 20 to me.
I read that on your website 2013. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. And I did the math, and I thought that's not that long ago. But of course, we remember when you opened up, and for our listeners that aren't aware, I mean, literally this is in an industrial park, and it literally was like a garage. You would go there. I mean, it was a nice garage, don't get me wrong, but it was like a garage. But you're right. And I have to be honest here, when you first started, I thought, well, how is this ever going to work? I mean, you're sitting in a garage, there's not much room. But then I went there with somebody and immediately figured it out. There is something here. And this is well before a lot of us were really aware of what breweries were, local breweries. It was my first experience, and I was hooked.
Yeah, when we opened our doors, so it was January 12th, 2013, we opened our doors. We were the only brewery within 60 miles.
Yeah, I'd never heard of a brewery that was other than someone brewing beer at home.
And I have to ask, because I'm like Thor, I heard about it through word of mouth, and we stopped by and immediately went, wow, the beer is phenomenal here.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was my years and years of geeking out on in my own garage.
It was, the beer was great, but it was just it was something so cutting edge and like almost, I don't want to say revolutionary, but it was just, whoa, what am I doing? I can see these where they're making the beer, and yeah, it was really cool. So,
yeah.
Well, that's many years ago. Now we're all familiar with it.
Yeah. What was your first beer?
Our first beer was Duck Pond Nut Brown Ale. That was the one that I launched with. I had already brewed a batch of Fence Line, so it was already in the tanks, and that was kind of the next week's release was Fence Line, and so those were our two starting beers leading off. And shortly thereafter was Dead Branch, and we really ran with those three for a good 4 or 5 months before we even came out with a seasonal, because, starting off, like I said, I thought it was going to be a part-time gig for me, and if I could pay the bills, that'd be great. And from day one, I struggled to keep up with demand. It was just like brew, and go for it, and improve the system, and from the first 14-hour brew day, I got it honed down and pretty efficient. So.
Yep. I want to talk a little bit more about that process. So does it take a while to get it to where do you have something in your head that you're imagining, and then you go, if I can just do this, and do you have a batch that turns out, no, that's not it, do another one that's closer to it? Walk us through that process.
A lot of it came from like me studying to become a beer judge. Part of that was learning your ingredients, learning the process. It's pretty easy to make beer when it comes down to it. As long as you're clean, sanitary, and you're keeping the temperatures in check, you're going to have something that resembles beer at the end.
It's pretty easy to drink it too, I've noticed.
Yep. But, to be repeatable, that's a struggle to make sure. You got to take really good notes on batch to batch. And just knowing kind of what goes into a beer. It's like I could probably come up with a recipe for just about any beer just off the cuff. It might get really close to what I want. It's kind of like being a chef. You generally know how much pepper to add to something, how much salt to add, and kind of play around with it. The downside is when we make a beer, we put everything together, throw it in the fermenter for 2 weeks, and you can't tweak it on the way. You can't tweak it in between. You got to kind of trust that it's going to come out at the end.
Yeah. So you're brewing beer in your original location. In the summer, the big garage doors went up.
Yep.
If I remember, your tables were old spools from industrial spools.
We went through quite a few different variations of furniture.
So now you're struggling to keep up with the demand.
Mm-hmm.
And you decided to open a new place.
Yeah. So we kind of built in stages, added a few more. The original place, we had plastic fermenters, and they were kind of a bugger to clean, but keeping on top of it was manageable. And then I went through a couple different build outs of adding more fermenters there, and we got to a point where we couldn't expand anymore. So it was essentially, we spent 3.5 years as a proof of concept for a new location. And it got to a point where it's like, we have to move. We have to move. We have to build. We have to add, build what I call our real brewery, the air quotes, real brewery.
Yes.
And that's where we're at now. So we've been in there now for 4 years, and it's just, it was wonderful, being able to move to a space that really fits the beer.
And from a business standpoint, I can tell you, you faced some really big decisions there, because you didn't just didn't go find something with cheap land. You went right to a nice part of our city and built a beautiful facility. So that was really a leap of faith, but not really, because it always is. It always has its risk, but boy, it's a beautiful place, and you did a great job. It's just everything about it feels great.
Yeah,
I will say, I think the first phase was a little bit more nerve-wracking, because it was completely unknown.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to be drinking beer with the same 12 people every Friday night in this garage. My beer geek friends, but it turned into something that people really liked and enjoyed. Yeah. So that was kind of I got into it for the beer, but I ended up just grabbing onto it for the people and the experience.
Well, and what I love about that part there is that you love the beer. It's obvious you just love your beer and you love brewing beer. But the fact that you didn't start out saying, "Hey, I'm going to open a big brewery and I'm going to dominate this." You just, like you say, it kind of pulled you along. You didn't push it; it pulled you along, and you had to go where it was going. So
I'm not nearly confident enough to just jump.
I know, it's scary,
right,
isn't it? Borrowing all that money.
It's
borrowing money, building a big facility, that's a big leap of faith.
Yeah. So when you built the new facility, what was some of your biggest concerns? I would think the brewing part of that had to be job number one.
Boy, you know what? Everything kind of just fell into place. I moved equipment around so often at the old place, and, tried to see what worked and what didn't. Naturally, I kind of like to visit breweries often. Mm-hmm. And the awesome thing about the brewing industry is I can almost walk into just about any other craft brewery, and if I know the owner, talk to them, they'll show me what they're doing, and it's just been great. Especially the Minnesota craft brewing industry has been just great to work with and grow with, because everybody's growing together, and everybody's got a different experience. What works for somebody isn't going to work for another person, and it's just such a collaborative industry. So I got to steal a lot of ideas from a lot of different breweries when we opened up, and that's just kind of the norm. You just play around with it and see what works for you and what doesn't work for others.
And we talk about that here on this show. The Pubcast Live is not about making one bar, everyone come to one bar. It's about just interviewing anyone who has anything to do with this industry. We love the industry. We love the people in it. And we just want our listeners to try all kinds of different places. Like I say, a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yeah.
And I like what you said. You found out quickly, it's about the people, isn't it? It's the social aspect. And we've said that from the very beginning on this show. Mm-hmm. Bars, pubs, breweries, they're all about people getting together to talk and socialize, and the beer is kind of secondary, or whatever the drinks might be secondary, but they're also an integral part of why we go.
Oh, for sure. It's social lubricant, really. You have a couple beers, and but it's fun. It's when you're at a bar or a brewery or a tap room or a cocktail room for a distillery.
Sure.
You're going there, and you're not really going to see something. You're going to see someone. It's the concept of the third space. It's not work. It's not home. It's that in between where you can one-on-one or in a small group or even a big group and just interact with people and just be comfortable.
All right. So you had duck pond to start.
Well, hold on.
Added fence line. What?
We're ready to crack. For our listeners, by the way, we're sharing these. Each time I crack one, we're sharing it. Three of us. So, but now we're going to move on to
his story, and
I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to that. We're moving on to one of your. Oh, I'm sorry. I cracked. Well, let's go to the duck pond.
Okay. The duck pond?
We're going to move in order here. Now, you said duck pond originally was
your first
beer.
Yep. And it was just kind of timing. Quite honestly, I thought fence line was going to be a little bit too aggressive for the Brainerd Lakes area. And so that's why I kind of led with Duck Pond. It's an easy drinking brown ale. It's dark, but it's got a ton of flavor. It's also 4.4%, so it's not going to knock you back too far. It's something, it's like an English pub style pint where you can sit and have a couple of them, enjoy a conversation, enjoy the company you're with.
Let's talk about, so you move into the new facility. You have the capability now to brew more beers. Is that safe to say with the new facility?
Oh, definitely. I mean, our batch sizes, I was on a 3-barrel system. So in brewing, everything is measured in barrels. So your typical big keg is a half barrel. So on the old system, I'd make 6 kegs per batch. Our new system, we can make 30 kegs per batch. And we've got a couple double size fermenters in there, so we can brew a decent amount. Our total output, basically multiplied by 5. And we've peak summer at the old place, we were cramming through. I mean, we were brewing 8 batches a week on that little system, and it was stressful. Now during peak summer, we can, on a big summer day or a big summer week that we're ramping up, 3 or 4 batches. It's a little bit more leisure. The beer turns out better because we've got better equipment and we've got a lot more control on what we're doing. So we can be a much more consistent in the new place, and we've got a little bit of room to grow. And we've kind of grown into it, as we the past few years that we've been up and running.
Now, as a brewer, you've also grown with the industry. And I say that because I've seen your menu board. And you don't just have fence line and duck pond anymore.
Right. Well, we kind of got down that kick at the old place because we were brewing 8 batches a week. We could throw in whatever we wanted to. It wasn't a big commitment, and we could just play around with stuff. And, you got 6 kegs worth, if it lasts a month, that's about all you're going to get out of a couple kegs. So we kind of pulled that into the new place too. Yes, our big system is quite a bit bigger, but I turned over my original system at Jackpine, which was a 1-barrel system, and we bought a couple little mini cute little fermenters that we can kick out pilot batches. And so we get 2 kegs out of one of our pilot batches, and that's kind of our playground. Any given,
it's like a sandbox. You can just play around with it. Yeah,
I love that.
I've got 2 brewers, and then other than myself now, it's like, and if we want to throw anything at that, it's only 2 kegs. You just take the day. Now the thing is, it takes the same amount of time to brew a pilot batch as it does on the 15-barrel system. So same amount of labor that goes into it, but you can just play around with anything. And I think right now we've got 24 beers that we can put on tap. We've got 2 nitro taps, so that's a little something different. But, between that, I'd say probably 4 or 5 at any given time are off of our pilot system. They might be around for a week, 3 weeks, but so we like to rotate stuff around and keep stuff fresh there. All
right. So you've got duck pond, fence line. Those are always there.
Yep.
What are some of the other ones that are, if you will, always there?
So
or is that it?
No. Okay. We've got our Dead Branch Cream Ale, very light, easy drinking. That's a year-round beer. A couple of years ago, we came out with a year-round IPA, our Lone Wolf IPA. So that one's around year-round. That one, we brew that one kind of intermittently, so it's not always available in cans. And those are all available in cans as well in the liquor stores. And then our Vengeance, which is our jalapeno cream ale, that's got enough of a weird following that it has to be year round. I get some people really angry if we don't have their Vengeance on tap. So it's a decent mover for us, but we've got to keep it around just for the people that really like that jalapeno beer. And those are kind of our five main year rounds. We do have a seasonal. We take our cream ale and put fruit in it. So in the winter, it's our blood orange cream ale, and in the summer, it's our lemon shandy. So those alternate seasons, and those are kind of our 6 categories that we have year round. And then we've got a couple seasonals. We do a Hornet's Nest honey lemon wheat in the summer.
I've had that. That's very good.
Yep, beer. It's also 6.5%. So you got to kind of watch out for it. It'll sting you. It'll sneak up on you real fast. And then our most popular seasonal, our Jacktober. It's our Oktoberfest style ale. That one comes out in September, October. Kind of in that time frame.
Well, we've talked about on this show before too about responsible, enjoying it responsibly. Usually someone, if a group is going out, someone kind of will lay back and maybe have one and take it easy. And I like what you're saying about that, because I know that at some point these beers were getting so strong that you couldn't, if you had two, you don't feel like you should really, and you shouldn't. Yeah. So, and you're mentioning the Duck Pond here is a little bit lighter, I guess, that way. And so.
Yeah, and we do kind of scale that in the tap room too. We've got 3 different sizes that we'll serve in. We do pints, the 16-ounce pints. We do 12-ounce glasses and 9-ounce glasses. Yeah, and we loosely base those on alcohol content.
Sure.
So, if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, of course, when Hornet's Nest comes out, we serve that in a pint. So that's a little bit. But even the stronger beers, we give you a shorter pour, so you can kind of gauge yourself on, I mean, it might be 9% of 9% alcohol beer, but you're only getting 9 ounces.
Right. So that's good. That's smart business too.
Yeah. And talk about some of the other creations. The reason I say that is because last summer I ran into someone who said, "Have you tried the cotton candy from Jackpine?" And I said, "What?" Now, this was a woman that I knew, and she said, "I think it's the best." Well, I did try it. It was a little sweet for me, but that was intriguing. What inspired you with cotton candy?
So that was a couple years ago now. I think it was for our 6th anniversary. What is it? Candy is the alternate gift. So I just threw it at my brewers at the time and said, "Give me some candy-inspired beers." And we came up with, so we had a new beer every day of the week leading up to our anniversary, and some of them weren't so great. And I honestly, I mean, they went after this one, and I went to do a little Instagram, picture, for the social media, and I poured the glass, and it was this obnoxious pink color. And I'm like, well, okay, this, whatever it's going to be called neon pink. And cause it's obnoxious. And boy, you taste it and it's like, wow, there's beers that I like, and then there's beers that I can truly appreciate, but really don't like. And that one I can appreciate. It's, if you want like cotton candy in a beer, that's it. I mean, it tastes exactly like it
and
sounds.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Not something that I would go for. Similar, we do a s'more stout too. And it tastes just like a s'mores in a glass. You get the graham cracker out of it. You get the chocolate, and we use marshmallow flavoring. So it's all of the components, and that's one of the fun parts for beer for me. Trying to come up with an idea and see if you can make it work and get the flavors to kind of meld all together. So it's like, yeah, I'm actually getting that in a beer. It might be something far out there and totally off the wall and not appropriate for beer, but it's, if trying to get those flavors to meld and work is just fun.
So let's say I'm a customer or I'm a listener to the show, and I've actually, oddly enough, never been to a brewery, let's say, or to your brewery. How do I mean, you got all these different flavors. I'm not going to walk in. Do you have a way for me to just try these, or is it how does that work?
Yeah, for sure. We do, most breweries, now I can't speak for all breweries, but most breweries will either do flights. They'll, you can go in and I mean, like at Jackpine, depending on what season we're working on, we either do 4 beers on a flight or 5 beers on a flight, and they're 4 or 5 ounce pours. So you can come in, order a flight, you can pick off the menu and be like, I think I'd like that one, that one, that one, that one. So it's kind of non-committal, and you can kind of run through it. Generally for breweries, now this isn't, like I said, not for everybody, but most cases you'll find somebody that's knowledgeable behind the counter that can kind of walk you through. Like my favorite question to ask when somebody comes in is, what do you normally drink? What do you lean towards? Do you like coffee?
Blatz. You got anything like that?
I would throw you at our Dead Branch Cream Ale. That's what I'd throw in there.
It's kind of a joke on this show. That was
that's sweet. Okay.
And for a second beer, I might try to sneak the Duck Pond in and be like, what do you think of this? Are you offended by this or not? But usually, offended. I know. But and we'll give samples. I mean, a lot of breweries, they'll give samples if you want to give. If you're at the counter or at the bar and be like, hey, can I get just a little snit of that? And
I ask this question because a lot of our listeners know exactly what you do and how you do it, but we have a lot of listeners that are maybe intimidated by walking into a brewery or something because they're not knowledgeable. They don't know what they're doing, and people get uncomfortable with that. So you don't have to worry about that. Just walk on in, and I've been to Jackpine. They're as friendly as can be. They're going to help you and just say, well, what do you, like you said, what a great question. What do you like? I mean, what, and then you'll start there and now, if you walk in and you say you like a whiskey Coke, I might struggle with that one. That might be a tough one to get into.
All right, what's your latest creation? Is it this one that's sitting right here in the can?
Well, it could be. Yeah, it's
this thing.
No. Boy, you know what?
Yeah,
we come up with a new beer. I challenged the brewers 2 years ago to come up with a new beer every single week. And we did it. Every Friday we had what we called Fresh Taste Friday, and a new flavor or maybe a twist on an old beer, maybe a fruit infusion or something like that. And we did it. And we've kind of continued that today. We at least once, maybe twice a week. Just launching in the tap room today. As I was leaving, they put it on tap. We've got an amber ale on tap. Just kind of playing around with different recipes, and
yeah.
I'm trying to fine tune something that might end up being a year round or a semi year round beer. So,
okay.
But yeah, one of the beers that we've got in front of us here is one of our latest creations, and this is one that we were able to just mix a couple kegs up, see how it worked, took an idea, ran with it.
Well, we're gonna pop it open here.
And then,
and I got to be honest with you, I'm very skeptical. Okay, I'm honest.
I would be too. I was, but.
People mess with my beer. I get a little funky.
It just works. So this is we nicknamed it Dead on Dill. It's a dill pickle cream ale. So again, it's our Dead Branch cream ale takes flavors amazingly. And we just came up with a mixture. So my wife has a habit of drinking our Vengeance, the jalapeno beer, with a little bit of pickle juice in it. So we figured we'd try that out, but we tried it with just our cream ale first just to see how it worked, and boy, it works really well.
But, by the way, your wife's name is Sara, correct?
Yes.
She's a big part of this equation. We haven't
absolutely.
We always got to give kudos.
She does have a full-time job outside of Jackpine, and probably a half-time job, if not full-time job at Jackpine.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, she's been my primary supporter.
Yeah.
A primary challenger on everything that I try to do. Yep. When I was starting out, my mantra was if I could convince her that it was a good idea, then I knew I was good. Because
that's a brilliant strategy, by the way.
Kidding.
Absolutely.
We could all learn from that one.
Well, I stopped by last week, and we had asked what's new, and you said this one, the
Dead on Dill.
Dead on Dill. And I told you that as a kid, and to this day, I occasionally will pull off the dill pickle jar, and take a little pickle juice. And I thought, that's got to be something. And we tried it, and I love this. It's just got a great flavor.
I guess what I love about this whole experience is I'm the guy where I don't want to mess too much with my beer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can give me a small glass of this, I will. It's interesting, and I like it. I'm not going to lie. Fence line I like more, but I love it. And and I would never try it, though, if it wasn't for things like flights and coming to a brewery. I don't know. It's just...
This is great. Patrick, let's talk about some other aspects of Jackpine Brewery. You've got some great product. But let's talk about... well, I want to go back to something you said. You're a beer judge.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, BJCP.
I thought I was.
BJCP. No, you're not a... No, this guy knows what he's talking about. You and I just...
He's got the credentials.
Actually, I don't know why I like what I like, but that's what I love about someone who's knows what they're talking about. But yeah, it says... I read it. You got your beer judge certification program, or as we like to say in the business, the BJCP. Right?
Exactly.
Tell us about that.
So the BJCP is the beer judge certification program. It's primarily organized around homebrewing competitions. But it's also referenced in a lot of the commercial competitions as well. They've got a test structure and a ranking system to educate judges. And, to become a BJCP judge, you have to be familiar with all of the established beer styles. The BJCP also puts out an established set of guidelines for styles. Roughly speaking, it kind of puts out guidelines as far as what should American Pale Ale taste like? Uh-huh. What should it not taste like? What should a brown ale taste like? What should a good German lager taste like? So there's kind of different categories, and those are all based on traditional brewing styles, things that kind of came about. They aren't creating these things. They're looking what's out there in the marketplace and kind of creating styles around those. So part of going through the program is, becoming familiar with all the established styles, knowing how to brew all of the different styles, loosely, right, and just, becoming familiar with particular off flavors, what common off flavors are in beer, what to expect and how, not only what to expect for off flavors, but how to fix it and where it came from. So it's a pretty intense program to run through, and it's by the end of it, I mean it was a 3-hour test to take this, part tasting, part written, and like there's an example.
Which part of the test do you do first? Do they have you taste first?
It's actually
part is really hard.
Yeah,
I would hope they do it in order.
It's actually through the whole process. The way it's structured is it's you get 10 questions,
saboteurs, and
at certain intervals you get a little 3-ounce pour of something, and you got to try to identify it. And they've got like a higher ranking judge in the room tasting it too, and you've got to figure out like what style it is, or if there's an obvious
Supreme
flaw.
Court beer judge.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Napoleon Dynamite with his milk tasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. I love it.
What a reference. Thank you for that. In the
well,
show.
for those Napoleon Dynamite fans.
Yeah.
Though.
Okay. Very interesting. Also, talk about. I've been to your place many, many times. I love the charitable work you do. Talk about some of that. Because
for sure.
You've really, really stepped up and done some great things for all kinds of different charitable organizations.
So a local brewery is really a community-supported business. Jackpine wouldn't have grown and be where we are today without the support of the community coming in and making it a great place to hang out. And so it only makes sense to give back and support the community that supports us. So we've got a lot of amazing charities, in the area. So, any way that we can help, through different ways, we've done sponsorships, we've done, I don't know how many silent auctions we've donated, just prize packages too. But then, one of our kind of key items that we do is our Pints for a Purpose.
Yeah.
We can
we'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Do it all you want.
So for Pints for a Purpose, we do typically on a Wednesday night. We were generally doing first and third Wednesday of the month. It got so popular that we were doing it twice a month, and we'd invite a charity in, and we'd donate $1 from every pint sold that night to the charity. And we brought in some pizza and, offered a free will donation for that as well. So it was a good event, not only to, kick a little money into a charity, but then also give them kind of an awareness in the community, give them an opportunity to speak to customers and kind of promote what they're doing and what they've got going on in the community.
It's really cool. I know you also, we haven't talked really about your facility, and we should talk a little more. Besides brewing beer, you have a wonderful facility, and I know you have a separate room that charitable organizations or groups can rent for a while, and then you've added a beautiful patio too.
Yeah, so we've got the main tap room is kind of your traditional tap room. You walk in, we've got an order counter. We don't have much bar seating. We really just encourage people to find a table and talk with people, rather than sit at the bar. We do have a side room that, we can close off, during the week when we're not quite so busy, or use that for renting out for different organizations. We've done birthday parties in there. We've done board meetings, various things in that room, groom's dinners and whatnot. So it's a kind of a separate space that we reserve. And yeah, you mentioned we've got an outdoor patio, something that we didn't have in the old location. And, I know summers in Minnesota aren't very...
but it was a parking lot.
Yeah.
It was literally a parking lot. You could walk out.
Legally, we weren't supposed to have people in the parking lot.
Well, what? Those days are done. And this is the internet. Nobody's going to hear this anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, no kidding. No, we're good now. The city loves us, so we're fine now. But yeah, we built out the outdoor patio, and it's just been just a wonderful opportunity out there, just to sitting outside and drinking beer. And we're kind of the spot we're right off 371, so just on the frontage road. So we're kind of set back enough enough that you were not right on the highway.
Yep.
But we've got enough property there that we've got literally a grove of jack pines that
it's beautiful.
kind of surround. You know, I couldn't have planned it any better. It just kind of happened that that's the best place for the building, and we wanted the patio out there. And then this past summer, we expanded the patio and kind of went. So we've got kind of an upper patio and then a lower patio, and then we just towards the end of summer we put in a stage down there. Really, stage is a loose term; it's a platform. And we started bringing in some live music during the summer, and we're look forward to doing that more this summer too.
Well, and I think this is also a natural evolution based on what we've all been through in the last year. Is the need to have space. Not only is it just wonderful to be outside, even in the winter, I might add, at Jackpine, they've got these beautiful fire pits. We've been there a couple of times. Actually, if you go to our Facebook page, our the head cover photo on our Facebook page is us standing, the board of directors standing there at Jackpine, enjoying a brew over a fire in the middle of the winter. It was amazing, and it was a cold day if I remember. Yeah. But it was let's face it, it's Minnesota. We got to do what we can do, and I loved it. I think your patio,
Patrick,
great.
Now part of that was because of the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the weird thing is I always kind of had that vision to expand that patio, and it almost like it took the pandemic to kind of force it, because we needed more space outside.
Right.
So that whole lower patio, and yeah, I mean, in years past, I didn't even plow snow off the patio, and in hindsight I probably should have, because it was pretty enjoyable. And we got some nicer fire pits that are a little bit easier to manage, and it turned out, I mean, that's going to be a permanent thing for us now.
It's changed the industry really, for whether we like it or not. I mean, it's changed the industry, but I personally think when you go to a place, the more areas you can go to enjoy what it is you're doing there. I mean, there's certain people that would never go outside on a patio and sit around a fire, but why not? We did, and we're like, this is just awesome.
You mean there was nobody that would go out on a patio in the middle of January and have a beer, but we did, and it was so much fun, I have to say. With the fire going, we were warm, everybody dressed for it, enjoyed the beer, and again, I can't tell you how many times, you start visiting that social aspect again. We're visiting with our neighbors at the next fire pit, and it was just great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the social part of it was really a lot of fun.
Well, and you mentioned the different spaces. That's what's cool about all these different bars that are available and breweries and whatnot. Yeah. Each one has their own specific feel. And
that's right.
It's not like you're not going to find a one size fits all, drinking establishment. You kind of find what you kind of lean towards, or kind of what you're in the mood for some days.
That's right. Yeah. And it varies. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Patrick, when you first started, you were the only game in town. Being the only game in town, that was kind of nice. But this industry that you're in has grown tremendously, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I mean, it was a year and a half before the second one opened up in the area, and now we've got 5 or 6, I believe. And it was kind of nice being the only one in town. But then again, as soon as we had 3 that showed up, Gull Dam was the first one. Big Axe and Nisswa showed up shortly thereafter. Mm-hmm. As soon as there were 3, we started seeing beer tours and beer tourism. People would come up, from the Twin Cities and be like, "Yep, we're going to hit all 3 today," and kind of, cycle through. Yeah. And we'd see them at noon on a Saturday, and then, sometimes they might come back, but it was, so we started seeing a little bit more beer tourism. So it is kind of cool seeing, a number of breweries in the area, because the rising tide does lift all boats, because everybody's going to have their own little zone that they want to, that they're willing to have a beer or 2 and then head home. Everybody wants to be kind of close to home.
And even though we predominantly are starting this podcast in the Lakes area, if you will, I mean, we have listeners all over. Mm-hmm. And of course, a lot of folks, like you say, from the metro or anywhere coming to the Brainerd Lakes area. That's just a huge part of it. And I love to hear that. What did you call it? Beer tourism or no?
Well, yeah, a little
beer tour.
Yeah, it's beer tourism. I mean, people have been familiar with like wine tourism. Right. People go visit wineries, and
so you're coming up from the metro or anywhere, and you're coming up to spend a beautiful weekend up here. We haven't even talked about growlers. We're going to have you back, Patrick. This is, we're going to have you back, because we haven't even talked about the growler. Now, most of our listeners know exactly what a growler is, but once again, I always like to play devil's advocate. What if someone's listening to this show and they've never been into a brewery, they're intimidated? a growler is basically just a nice big jug of your fresh brewed beer. So if you're coming up for vacation, you swing in, grab a growler, bring it up to where you're going, and then maybe it takes you all weekend to sip through that or whatever. It's just a great way to have super good beer.
Yeah, it's 64 ounces, so it's just shy of a 6-pack. And yeah, it's fresh beer. We fill it right off the tap.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
And I might add that you also started Crowlers, which is another larger can of beer, but they're fun too.
Yep. So a Crowler, Minnesota's kind of unique. We've got a few laws that we're actually trying to work to try to change those. But breweries can sell the 64 ounce jugs, growlers, or the 750 milliliter container, which we have a custom can made for that size, and it ends up being 25.4 ounces. So it's almost like 2 cans of beer, or it is a little bit more than 2 cans worth of beer. But those are the 2 sizes that breweries in Minnesota can legally sell. And they're kind of fun. It's 2 cans of beer, great for sharing. If you're drinking something a little bit lower alcohol, perfect for an evening session type of thing. Right. And it's a grab and go. So the glass jugs, the growlers, will charge a $5 deposit, and that's pretty standard. And so once you buy it, that's your glass, and then you can bring it back to refill it. Fills are starting at about $12, after taxes. Yeah. Yep. Whereas a Crowler, you can get a couple different varieties and just run with it. It's like you recycle it just like a can. You're not committed to a big glass.
Right.
So,
yep.
Very interesting. It's fascinating. We're going to run out of time here before too long. And you're right. We want to have you back again because there's so much more we haven't even talked about with this. But we've said it before, and if you look it up, beer itself goes back to ancient Egypt or before, doesn't it? What is it that? Why do we like beer?
Well, there's alcohol in it. Let's be honest. But it was also, early on, it was a way to preserve the harvest. You've got this grain which
stored
is
value.
Yeah, this grain which is very perishable. All of a sudden, if you mix it with water and kind of let it ferment a little bit and mash, and just kind of you pull out the liquid, it's got alcohol in it. They figured out that you throw hops. Hops are an antibacterial agent, and you can do something with this, and you've got a liquid that's preserved. You can package it, and it's stable. So that's one of the reasons why that popped into existence. Is it's a way to use the harvest into something that's more stable. And early on, a lot of the beers probably were a little bit more thick, a little bit more rich, a little bit more substance to them, which you can find beers out there that are like that now. Now it's a little bit more geared towards, clean finishing, shelf stable, and with a little bit more of an alcohol content to it.
All right. We've already established the fact we're going to have you back sometime. But one last question. What surprised you the most about getting into this business?
My biggest surprise was just how many people were excited about this. I mean, from day one, it's just to see people come into the brewery, whether it's somebody new or one of our regulars, to come in and to see that they enjoy just hanging out with us. Whether it's the beer or the people behind the bar, or like Sara and I wandering around the tap room chatting with people. That was my biggest, like I said, from early on, I thought I'd be drinking with the same 12 people every Friday night. But to see, people just really getting behind this and loving the space and loving the community that we've created.
Yeah. And, we have a friend named Todd. I'm not going to mention his name, but he absolutely loves your place, and he can't say enough about it. So. Yeah.
All right. We didn't even get to talk about some of the other special events that you do, and we'll have to have you back another time to talk about some of those aspects and other things that you do in the community. But I can't tell you how much we really appreciate you being here today to talk about Jackpine. It's we could talk about beer for a long time, Pat.
Oh, I could. Yeah, you could talk my ear off. You didn't even get me down like the whole geekiness about how to make beer or anything like that.
It was on my list, but I thought we better hold that.
Well, I think for some of our listeners, we'll lose them too. I mean, it's just it gets really technical. There's a lot to it, but all you got to know is it's great fresh beer brewed right here in the Brainerd area, and you can't go wrong. Just drop on in.
Okay, one last question. What's your favorite beer at Jackpine?
Besides Blatz.
The one that I have in my hand.
Perfect answer.
The one that I haven't.
I really do drink just about anything we make. I like exploring the different flavors. If I did have to pick, right now we've got a Russian Imperial Stout that lands about 9.7%. That was aged in a cherry brandy barrel, and that is just it is a sipping delicious.
Okay, time to wrap up the show and go to Jackpine and try some of that.
Yeah, there we go.
Patrick Sundberg, it's been such a pleasure to have you here on Pubcast Live. Thank you for coming by, and again, we'll have you back another time.
All right, thanks for having me.
Patrick Sundberg is the owner of Jackpine Brewery, and just a lot of fun to talk about all the great beers. We hope you'll stop by and try them. You'll find them in Baxter, just off 371. Google it. They're also online with a web Facebook page and a website, so you can find them that way. And that concludes this segment of Pubcast Live. Oh my gosh, Thor, that was just so fun to talk with Patrick about Jackpine Brewery and the process, his start, and everything that is involved in the brewery here in the Lakes area. And the samples were good too, I'm just going to say.
They were really good. As always, though.
Yeah. What did you think of the beer with pickles?
I quite enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah, it's a really good beer, and just one of the many craft beers that they've dreamed up at Jackpine.
Well, yeah, they make so many of them. It's complicated, but I have my favorites. But definitely, I enjoyed it. What a great interview.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I got a feeling we only scratched the surface, too. I mean, we're going to have him back.
As we said, well, I think Patrick will be back because there's a lot of ground we didn't get to cover. Well, in the meantime, if you have a favorite bar that you'd like us to talk about, or maybe a favorite topic that you'd like us to explore on Pubcast Live, please get a hold of us.
That's right. Get a hold of us anytime. Pubcast.live, that's .live, that's our website. You can get a hold of us on social media. On Facebook, we're Pubcast Live, and of course, YouTube, Pubcast Live. Or send us an email anytime, like our listener comments here that we had at info@pubcast.live. We love to get the comments. And by all means, when you're listening to this on Facebook, your bar's favorite page or something, please comment on that too and like our page. It helps our show a lot. We appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. That's it for this edition of Pubcast Live.